Here is the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, episode 70. 70. This podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Turrbal people. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They were the first music makers on this land. Hello, I'm Debbie O'Shea. Welcome to this episode of the Crescendo Music Education Podcast. I talked to Grant Ward, musician, composer who lives in Melbourne here in Australia. A fascinating talk. I really enjoyed speaking to him. I've used his music before but never actually spoken to him. So it was a complete delight. Everything he said I agreed with. It was just amazing. In part one of our chat, you'll hear quite a bit about his experience. It's really so interesting. I think you're going to love listening to Grant Ward. Hello and welcome to Grant Ward. Actually, you've got a J in there. Do you like to say the J?
Oh no, not particularly. I've always had this thing, like as a kid, you go around the circle and clap your name, and it's just like Grant Ward. I've only got two claps, and it just felt like not enough. So I just put the J in there, but it doesn't really matter.
Oh, I like it. What I can tell you, all of the primary music teachers listening to this is going to go, I so understand that.
Yes,
Because I'm
yes. I always
teaching.
felt like I was a bit cheated somehow.
Cheated. You don't have enough syllables in your word. You'd just be
No,
ta. That, yeah, I get it.
that's
Okay.
right. Yeah, very plain.
Now, but you are not at all plain. You are a very talented person. So I'm going to start by reading your biography, and then we'll have a chat after that so that people who haven't come across you. So here we go. So Grant Ward was drawn to music from a young age, despite not growing up in a musical family. For 3 years, from the age of 5, he was so persistent in asking his parents for piano lessons that at the age of 8, they finally gave in. Subsequently, Grant was very involved in music at both primary and secondary school and started writing songs at the age of 12. Wow, you'll have to tell us about that in a minute. Anyway, by the age of 14, he was accompanying the school choir in rehearsals and performances, and at 15 started teaching private piano lessons. And by this time, he was set on a path to music that just seemed meant to be. Grant studied a BMUS at Melbourne University and then went back to do his dip ed several years later. He's been involved in music education, yay, for over 40 years. Hey, join the club. Having taught music and choirs both in Australia and overseas. Grant has composed, arranged music for Antics Theatre Company, the Victorian College of the Arts, ABC Sing. Is that it, as in the songbooks?
Mm, mm-hmm.
Well, oh, we missed them. Anyway,
I know. Yeah,
yeah,
we do.
book series,
Yeah.
Just Life Music, Scorekeepers Music, USA, English Schools Foundation, Hong Kong, and Australian Girls Choir, including Sydney's Carols in the Domain. He has worked as a singer-songwriter and has also written the music and libretto for 5 stage musicals, including Cafe Butterfly. Phew. Okay, Grant has had a long association with the Australian Girls Choir and is currently the music and production coordinator and a senior tutor for AGC in Melbourne. Grant is probably most widely known for his published collections of original vocal rounds, Spin Round and Spin Round 2, and the upcoming Spin Round 3. And that's how I know you, is through Spin Round.
Mm.
Oh, you've done a lot of things. Wow. Before we go on, tell me
A
about
long
when you
time.
started writing. Tell me about when you started writing songs at 12.
Uh, I don't have any of those songs anymore. But yeah, I think that I've always approached music from the creative side of it. So I think it was very natural. I just started. I was a big ABBA fan back then,
Yeah.
and I heard songs and I thought I think I could probably write something myself, So I just basically started, jotting stuff down on manuscript paper and playing at the piano and recording them and on the old cassette tapes, that in those days. It was very, I never used any of them at that point, but I do remember that process of starting and the first sort of couple of times that you maybe show someone what you've done as well, which is
Yes.
quite nerve wracking. But then just I don't know, I just found that a very natural thing to do. I think I've always approached music from that side. Um,
Yes,
yeah.
it almost sounds like it's something inside you wanting to come out.
Mm,
That's
I think so.
fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
listening to that brief bio, would there be anything else you'd like to add to that?
Uh, I really don't know. I think I have really enjoyed the variety of what I've done, I guess. I didn't start off teaching in schools. I did my BMAs first, and then there was quite a number of years before I did my dip ed, and then actually became a school teacher as such. I mean, I did lots of teaching in other kind of realms, I guess, and did the piano teaching and choirs and things like that. But then and now I no longer do that. So I feel like I've kind of had a lot of variety. So that's what I've enjoyed, and I tend to like a lot of different sorts of music as well. So that's helped, I think, to be able to be involved in different things, like in music theatre, and then accompanying, more serious music, and then the pop side, the jazz side, songwriting, choirs. Like, it's just the variety I think I've really enjoyed. Sometimes I feel like maybe it's meant that I haven't really got very good at anything particular because I've done so many different things. But yeah, I do think that's probably what I would add if I added anything into that little blurb. I've had different blurbs in the past. A couple of times I really like the ones where they're a little bit quirky and funny, and but they didn't seem to last very long because people said, "But we want to know what you've actually done." Like, yeah, it's funny, but can you tell us what you've actually done? But yeah, so I guess humor's probably followed me around over the years as well, which is a good thing, I think, when you're teaching young people a lot.
Yes, I think you need it. I really do. So when you were in
Yeah.
schools, was that in
Mm.
primary or secondary, private, state, or
It was mostly primary. I did a secondary dip ed, and the first job I got was in primary, which was actually 3-year old preschool all the way up to year six. And then once I did that first job, I just thought, I just love primary. I just wanted to stay in primary. And so, really, pretty much most of the sort of longer term job placements were primary. I did 5 years over in Hong Kong, and that was primary as well. So yeah, I just really have a soft spot, I think, for the primary years, and they're so open and ready. You can do anything really when
yes,
they're young. I feel like it's only when they get older that they start to get a bit choosy and picky.
yes, they are so
Yes,
accepting and so loving. And
yes,
it's
yes.
so important what so many musicians get it the wrong way round, I think. To be influential and important, you need to be up with the great top level musicians. No, no, you should be down with these
Mm,
young kids. You're
mm.
laying these foundations, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think that's what I loved about it, you know. Yeah, and seeing like human beings do things for the first time in music is just so exciting, it's discovering things or hearing a particular style of music they've never heard before, or using an instrument they've never touched, or all you sort of get all of those firsts, I think, in primary, which is always it's quite magical, really, I guess.
Yes, I think so too. Yeah,
Yeah,
couldn't agree more. So,
yeah.
when we're thinking about your journey as a musician, as a composer,
Mm.
what do you think would be your highlights? And also, I really like to just hear for what you're grateful.
Mm. Highlights are interesting to think about because I guess when I think of a highlight, I think of something that sticks in your head, even though the years kind of pass on. And the very first highlight, which really doesn't have to do with composing, it's more of an experience. When I was 10 years old, we lived in the UK for a year because my dad used to travel quite a bit for work. And this particular time he had to stay for 14 months. So we all went with him. And I had a great experience at school in the UK because music was quite different there than I was experiencing at school in Australia. And it was a lot more integrated, I guess, into everyday life in the school, and there were choirs and there were things and I was getting involved. But I remember once going to a performance of the Bach Choir at the Albert Hall, and I can remember this as plain as anything. It was like a Christmas thing, and at the end, apparently, this is a tradition. They invite all the children up on the stage to sing the last carol, and I just remember going up with all the children. And when I look back on it, I think that was probably one of the really significant things in creating my love of working with choirs, I think, and choirs in general, was just having that experience of, because as a little kid, there's like the massive choir behind, and then all of us sort of on stage. I can't remember what it was. It was probably Away in a Manger or something like that, like a really well known carol where we all joined in. And I just thought, this is amazing. Like this experience, it was something I'd never experienced ever before. So that stands out to me as a highlight. I'm not sure if that's the kind of thing that you mean, but
No,
I
that's
think that,
amazing. And you know what? That
yeah, sort of,
reinforces what we were saying, the
yeah,
power that we
exactly.
have over
Yeah,
influencing young people.
yes, exactly. And that was on such a massive scale. I mean, I don't know, it was a few hundred kids, I think, went on the stage. There would be no way that anybody there would have known what that meant to me as an individual. And then I guess as time's gone on, conducting mass choirs and doing things where there is a lot of kids, and sometimes you feel like it's hard, you feel like you should connect more with individually, but it's so hard because there's 100 people in the choir or whatever it is. But then I think back to that time and think it doesn't matter. It does it for you. It's the experience, and the whole package of it is what creates that connection. And you don't need words as such, or you don't even need that one-to-one contact. It's just the whole thing of it, which is so significant, and so influential, I think. Yeah, and then I mean, I guess just generally as an adult and in my adult life and doing composing and arranging is just hearing the music being used,
Mm.
and knowing that people are using it. Um, every now and then I get a message or an email say, "Oh, we won this competition and we sang your round," or something like this, or
Yeah.
oh, we've been doing this one and the kids really love it, and all of that. And then other times with AGC at the moment, we're just performing things that I guess you've had a hand in, and then seeing it take on its own sort of life, like it's possibly got nothing to do with me then, because a whole different person is conducting it, a whole lot of other people have taught it, a whole different person is accompanying. I'm nothing to do with it anymore, but it's kind of got this life that's going on. I find that really, I guess, fascinating, but rewarding as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Very special, I think, to be
mm,
to be part of that even. And in your case, it
mm.
would be you'd be even the catalyst. Like it wouldn't even exist without you. Like that's amazing. Like planting a seed and away it goes.
It is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really
Yeah,
special. And that singing together
yeah.
is magical. Well, that's one of the reasons why the lovely Deb Bryden and I have helped coordinate our Together Sing, which I will
Mm,
tell you
mm.
about later if you haven't yet heard about Together Sing.
I
We
have heard
started
about it.
last,
Yes,
you have,
yes, I have.
because we
Yeah,
started
even though
last
I'm in
year.
Melbourne, but I
Oh,
have heard
well,
about it. Yeah.
we had registrations in every state and territory and overseas last year.
Oh,
Mm.
oh, right.
So
I
our
didn't realize
first,
that.
so it was our inaugural year, 2022, and we had
Mm,
over 150,000 singers.
mm.
So
Wow.
we've just released this year's
Wow.
tour. It's all free. So if you think Music Count Us In, and we lost Music
Yes.
Count Us In, um,
Mm,
we just felt that we needed a replacement for singing together and for music education
yes.
advocacy. So we replaced
Fantastic.
it. Yeah. So I will send you all the
Great.
details. Mm.
Please do.
I'll put the details in
Yeah.
the show notes too. So all those people listening can
Yes.
register. It is
Oh, yeah.
free. It is free.
Oh,
Anyway,
that's fantastic.
look, I think that's wonderful, but I'd like to get round to Spin Round because that's my favorite and that's how I found out about you. I just bought it somewhere and went, oh, I love this piece. I love this piece. I've run out of time to further delve. I just keep using my favorites, so I
Mm, mm.
must schedule time to, I have your second book. I don't think I've even listened to it. I think I ripped the CDs in, but I don't think I've even listened to it. But I will confess that Morning Star, which was the first one, I don't know, it just grabbed me for some reason. It's just magical. It is just the most magical piece. So uh, now I'm sure there's no black and white answer to this next question. All right. But I would love to know, is there a way that often these compositions come about, or are they varied? So like in my head, like if I was going to write a round, I would
Mm.
go, okay, I've got a couple of ways. I could start with lyrics if I've got an inspiration. I could start with the melody and then meld the melody into the chord progression that works. Or do I start with the chord progression? And then Morning Star has the most interesting rhythmic components that once you hear it in canon, it's magical. So I've just said a whole lot there, which didn't make a lot of sense. But what I might do
No,
is,
it made perfect sense to me.
oh, it did. Okay. Um, I think I think we should at this point play the listeners Morning Star. Would that be all right with you if we played the Morning Star?
Sure. I thought you were going to say we'll sing it. And then I was going to think, oh, I haven't
Oh,
warmed up.
yeah, I'd be going, oh my heavens, no. I'm on a little bit of long service leave
Probably
now.
not the top E flat. It's a bit early.
But when the children sing it, oh my goodness. And that's the other thing
Mm,
I love
mm.
about your CDs. Well, I should stop saying CDs because people, if you want to buy this, digital downloads I saw on the
Yeah, nobody
site.
buys CDs anymore.
Yes, there's no CD players anymore. I got to hang on to my old computer here. So if
Mm,
anybody is loving the look of this, we'll put your website in the show notes and people
right.
can go and have a look, have a listen to the samples, and they can buy digital downloads. So
Yes.
without any more
Easy.
ado, let's have a listen to Debbie O'Shea's favourite, Morning Star. Okay, now let's get back to my question. Tell me how you write these things.
Well, generally, the rounds came about because I couldn't find anything that I liked, to be honest. I mean, there was a few, but then once I kind of done those, I was spending so much time trying to find things that uh, I felt like were through composed melodically as well as being great as a round. That's what I felt was missing. Sometimes I felt like this is going to sound a bit like, you know, I'm not judging other people's rounds or anything like that, but just from my point of view, my favorite rounds are the ones that when you just sing it as a melody, you could stop. You could just sing that melody and go, "Isn't that a beautiful little song?" There's not, you don't need to do anything else. But then when it obviously with then when it comes together as a round, it works beautifully as well. But I think there's a lot of rounds that sound great in a round, but because in the through composed way they're not super kind of, I guess, logical or melodic, they're actually hard to teach because they're not logical for the people learning them either. They're not simple. They don't kind of feel like that sounds like a logical melody. So that was kind of where it came from in terms of getting rounds together. I had no thought of doing a book or anything like that. It was just for my own teaching and just thinking, well, tomorrow I want to do blah, blah. I'd love to have a round in my warm ups or something like that. And, this is the theme of the repertoire we're covering. So how about I do it in the same theme or something like that? But then in terms of actually the composing process, most commonly I write the lyrics and the melody together. For me, it makes it, I like it when it sounds like they're inseparable. So for me to write it in that way tends to make it, from my ear anyway, sound more like the lyrics complement the melody and vice versa. Haven't always done it that way, but that's probably the most common way I've done it. And then in terms of writing around, it's quite a theoretical, almost mathematical thing as well in terms of then the lining up of the parts. And it's interesting that you say about Morning Star and the interesting rhythmic situation. I really like sometimes playing with that a bit as well, and so that it doesn't just sound like a chordal, um, everything sort of happening together. Some of the rounds are like that, but I like that kind of feeling of like the voices popping in and out at different times depending on what's happening. So you don't feel like any one line of the round is the most important line or is like the SOP one line. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have any hierarchy in terms of the line. So I think to vary the rhythm and the melody in that way, so things are popping in and out. I like sort of playing with that as well, um, and then a lot of it was also about music style because probably if anyone's already familiar, you're probably aware that there's lots of different styles in the rounds as well. And I find that really interesting in young kids because as adults, we can just say, oh, it's like a, 60s doo-wop or something. And then straight away in our head it goes, and we know what that means. And then we know how we're going to perform it and what sort of sound is that. But of course, to say that to an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, that means really nothing. And so I found that in my teaching in general, I was really becoming very interested in, I guess, immersing the kids in different genres, different, decades, different periods, and starting to get that sort of thing building up in their brain and their psyche as a musician. So then that sort of, encouraged me then with the rounds to kind of think in the same way and think, oh, let's do a kind of let's do a 60s kind of, one. Let's do something that sounds a bit more maybe classical. I've just actually written one last year about pasta. It's called the Pasta Opera, and it lists all the different pasta, but I've done it like in Mozart operatic sort of style, So I think it's another sort of layer that I just kind of had in there in terms of introducing style and genre to children as well. And also, it's just fun. It's just fun to sing in different styles. And I felt like traditionally rounds weren't really in different styles. They were kind of more, one
I know.
kind of choral, whatever that means. But, um, yeah, I don't know. Does that answer the
No,
question?
no, absolutely. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm just so following what you're saying, and I'm so going to listen to the whole CD. And can I say, I'll stop saying CD, I'll say audio. The other thing is magic. And I'll tell you what, this is going to send everybody that's listening straight to your website. Um, you actually have a backing track
Mm,
as well as the vocal model. And can I say the vocal model? Beautiful. The number of times that I've bought things that have, and you're just going, oh my goodness, I cannot stand that singing. You might listen to it for yourself. You'd never play it to the kids. But
mm,
your models for both the backing and the vocals are just so beautiful. So I'm certainly going to go and listen to all of those different things now and see where I'm going to plug it in. But I know what you're saying. So many rounds, like cannons, I guess, as well. You know,
mm,
one that's based around do. Oh, now here's the part that's based a third above. Oh, now we're in the third bit, which is
mm,
based around the fifth above.
mm,
Let's put it
mm,
together. We've got a cannon. We've got a round.
mm.
Um, so what you're saying makes sense, and it just comes across. The beauty of the line is there. I think that's wonderful. Oh, it's just reinforced everything I felt about your work, so that's wonderful.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you. I think too, like, and I've done this a lot as well, is it means that then you can use them as concert pieces. You know, you can put them in your your program, and especially if you don't have an accompanist, you've got the track, you know, everything, but you can kind of create. I mean, I know people that have done quite different things to what I've got on the track as well, and done different kind of arrangements and put them in more parts than what they are, and that kind of thing, and maybe done a unison and done some parts and gone back to the unison at the end or whatever, and you can kind of mix and match and make it into a little concert piece and use it in that way as well. And it's, you know, it sounds very impressive, but because it's around, it's actually not that hard to get
No,
an even inexperienced group to put it together, you know.
I have absolutely used your pieces in competition. I have not hesitated. Sing it beautifully in unison, some nice phrase shaping, layer up the round, and it's beautiful. And I think that often, especially us working in schools full time, you don't
Mm,
have a huge amount of time to spend on your choral
mm,
work. You
mm,
certainly
mm,
don't have the time to do all of the preparation. I'm really lucky where I work, we actually employ a choral conductor. So we have Catherine really, who comes in and takes our choirs, and she's amazing. The planning, I often sit in and support, usually, and she just blows my mind, the amount of preparation that she's put into
mm, mm,
how she works with the choir. And I just think, I I don't think I'm an appalling choral conductor. I quite like doing it. I just know I can't put in that time. To do it
mm,
well takes a
mm,
lot of time. So I think
mm,
that having things like a few magical rounds can add to your program with, I don't want to say very little work, a lot less work, say, than
mm,
teaching
mm.
a full three-part, octavo thing. So I think
Yes.
they're magic for us who work in schools.
Mm, mm. Yeah, well, I've used them with a whole heap of different, you know, ages and ranges, and you know, in the book, as you know, they're sort of graded as well. So we say which ones are the easy ones and the harder ones and the medium kind of ones. And obviously, with an inexperienced group, you wouldn't go with the super harder ones. But it's that thing of like you're almost tricking them into singing harmony. You know, it's like a bit of a magic trick, which I think is really cool, and it's such a good introduction to singing harmony as well, which is why I think even before I started writing rounds myself, I just loved using them because I thought they were such a great step from unison singing to part singing, sort of like that thing in the middle where you can kind of let everybody know it's not tricky, it's not too hard, it's not scary, we can do it. And then from there you can kind of move into, more advanced 2 and 3 or even 4 part work, I guess. But yeah, I just love rounds. I just really
Yeah, so
like
do I.
them as a
So do
thing.
I. They're one of my favorite things. I've
Mm,
had a,
mm,
a a half-hearted go at composing some, and I've gone, they're pretty terrible. But one day I might get back and give it another go. Okay, we are up to my nuggets of fabulous. Um, do you have any tips, tricks, ideas, repertoire, even your favorite repertoire? I know I've banged on about Morningstar because it's my favorite, which shows I have to go listen to some more. But you might have a favorite of yours you could share with us, or any ideas that might interest my listeners who are all music educators.
mm. I this is probably going to sound very simplistic, but in all of my sort of time of teaching, and then in the role that I have at the moment, which is very much about supporting um, other teachers, um, it I just always come back to how important the beat is, which sounds so incredibly simple, but everything relates to the beat. And so when I sort of am seeing a group of children learning something, and maybe they're struggling a bit with how to feel the music or how the rhythms fit in, and they're sitting still, I think, why? I always think why. So I think like that frame, like the beat is the framework. It's the way that we, as adult musicians, think we sometimes forget that internally we have that beat happening, whatever it is that we're either listening to, singing, teaching, whatever, it's there, and everything is referenced around that. Even I think if you're singing a super lyrical piece and it's got a super long note at the end, like 4 semibreves tied, and it's a rit and there's a pause, you're still relating that to the beat. You're still thinking, okay, you're hearing that pulse slow down in your mind, you're getting to the pause, and then you're waiting for the conductor to cut it off or for you to finish it or whatever. Even when you're trying, for a effect of no beat, I guess, and some pieces are like that too. It still refers to the beat, and we still refer to that. So I just think in all my choir work, and then when I was working in schools, I just loved to get everybody up, get everybody moving, get them feeling it in their bodies, get them, using instruments, even if it's choir, pass around some rhythm sticks or something and get them to feel the beat, because it is a very natural thing that I think we unlearn because we don't do it, and we're not encouraged to do it. We're very encouraged to sort of sit and not feel the beat in our bodies, and I think it's so important. So I don't even know. Some people are probably going, well, yeah, of course, but I know that I see so often teaching where people are still, and I think it's just so important that we're teaching people to feel the music in their bodies and to have that framework. It's just so much a part of. I mean, even if you're doing a crescendo, you're relating it to the beats of the bar. How that's going to develop over however many bars the crescendo is or whatever. It's all that. It's that framework. So I think I don't know if that's very wise
Oh,
or a nugget,
I think it's very
but
wise. I
that's
count that as a
what comes
very,
to my mind.
yes. No, and
It's simple, but yeah, I
but
think
vital and essential. And I do
yeah.
think that we sometimes, that I yes, I can see how something like that can be overlooked. And I even see it sometimes
Mm,
in
mm,
primary classrooms. For goodness sake,
mm,
let your
mm,
kids let your kids move. They need to feel that. But it's vital in the whole pedagogical process. You need to hear, you need to feel, you need to
mm,
see,
mm,
then write. Like it's the end of
mm,
we're not just doing worksheets.
mm.
The feel
Oh, no,
is
no.
essential.
Mm,
And I
mm,
love that, relating it back to the beat. No, that's an absolute nugget.
mm. Okay, good.
Love it. I love it. Um, I'm not sure what sort of situation you're in at the moment and how much you have to, or you see around you, the mm, deterioration or degradation of music programs. But certainly,
Mm,
in my experience, we're seeing this happen, that music education is not being as valued as it should be, because we know how powerful it is on so many
yes.
levels.
Mm,
So it's just become a bit of a thing. I think it's actually my mission in my life, is this whole music education advocacy. So
mm,
have you
mm.
seen much need for it in your situations where you find yourself? And if you do, what sort of advice would you give us in fighting for our music programs to be prominent and important?
Mm. I mean, I think I'm trying to think when I actually stopped teaching in schools. I think it was about 2014. Um, Even then, you could see this kind of decline happening, well, in Melbourne anyway,
Yes.
of just cut. Well, oh no, we don't really need that. Let's cut that, cut that. Um, but on the bigger scale of just music in society, it almost makes me cry whenever I'm at a birthday and people sing happy birthday. And I think nobody can sing anymore
No, no,
unless
no.
you're with a group of your musician friends or something. But if it's just general public, and I think it's that idea of sort of people finding the key and then people singing together and all that octave jump in Happy
Oh,
Birthday.
octave leap. Yep.
I often use that in auditions because I
Yeah.
think it really
Guess what?
separates them out. It's
Guess what?
like,
That's what I
oh,
do.
you got the octave.
Yes, I have I
Yeah.
have two audition songs. I have Happy Birthday, and I do the beginning of the national anthem. Do, do,
Mm,
do, 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 do. I just need those notes, and I've got
yeah.
an idea.
Gives
And
you a really good idea, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. But I think, and to me, that is a result of not having music in education. A big part of it. I mean, the other side of it is we don't really sing in public much anymore. If I think back to when I was a kid or when my parents were kids, most people would go to church, for example, and you'd sing every week in church, or, there'd be lots of community situations where you would sing, but it's so much less now that it's natural for people to sing. So I think not only do people sing less, but they feel self-conscious about singing as well. It's not a natural thing for a lot of people to do. But all you have to do is look at a little baby and a little toddler and see how natural it actually is.
yes,
And in some ways, that makes it even sadder because obviously they're unlearning something that's very natural for them to do and becoming self conscious about something that is a very natural thing to do as well. So, and this is talking about pre 2015, but whenever I started in a new school, I would always advocate for year level singing, where we'd have half an hour every week of this is in addition to having a music class or whatever, just half an hour every week. So all the year fives come, then all the year fours come, and we just sing and we just like build up a group of songs that we know, no agenda to perform it or anything, and ask the kids, what are you listening to at the moment? Is there anything you'd like to sing? That kind of thing. Just get that love of singing and the naturalness of singing together back. And I've found that really um, not just not just great in terms of musically, but it was great for the school. It was like this, because we know music brings us together, and this idea of all of the year five, year five classes coming together, and all the teachers are sitting up the back, and we put some silly actions to it or something, and everyone's jumping up and having a good time, and even just that aspect of it was so great as well. But um, uh, and even though I'm a pianist, really, I think singing is just so, so important. Because it comes from us, it's, you've got it with you all the time. It's not anything external. And I think to encourage that and to have that, and we have so many studies, like we've got studies coming out of our ears about how good music is and how beneficial it is and how it helps, people do better at maths and, like you could probably go on forever about all the studies that there are. So it's not like we haven't got evidence, but I think it's about, I don't know, I think it's about getting people on board. And I know that doing that year level thing, often at the beginning, it would be met with resistance. And it's like, oh, that's half an hour out of our time and, this or whatever like that. But without exception, people were on board with it once they were experiencing and seeing the benefits of it. And that's just something really super, super simple. Is just like getting them all together and let's have a sing. But yeah, I think it's quite frustrating, and it's interesting. Even in AGC, for example, we've got girls all the way from prep to year 12. To see them come in, and you can so tell who's got music in their school. You can pretty much tell, within a week or two of having them, who's already having other experiences and who is this the first thing for them. It's very obvious in that regard as well. But I think it's also about, and I don't know, this is a controversial thing to say, but I think it's also, as music educators, letting go of that idea that we are training up musicians or we're training up people to go into the profession of music. I think sometimes we do get a bit stuck on that. And I think it reminds me, music education in its best form reminds me of almost like Victorian times, when people would sort of get a good education. So they would learn the piano, they would learn a language, they would learn to paint, and it's all part of kind of rounding them as a person, or as a well-rounded person, and a person who is able to express themselves, who's able to work well in social interactions and work with other people. And, it's like, it's all of this kind of, the peripheral, I guess, benefit. Well, they're not peripheral, that's not really the right word, but the wide-reaching benefits of being involved in music. But yeah, I don't really have any magical ideas as to how we do this, but I just think it's so sad. I mean, there's many schools in Melbourne that don't have music at all. They just don't have it. And so, unless the class teacher is doing something with them, and they don't sing in assembly, they'll have a whole assembly with no singing. And so they're just not getting it, and it's I think it's really sad. So I don't know how we bridge that gap of like, hey people, so we've got all this evidence of like why it's good. Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you. I agree. I agree 100%. Obviously, all my listeners do too, I'm sure. And that is the difficulty. We know of the cognitive, social, and emotional benefits. And like, it's why I'm in the job. If I happen to produce a couple or be part of the journey of some professional musicians.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
yeah,
Like, that's great. But
yeah. Oh,
that's not
yeah.
all my job is.
No,
My
no.
job is developing that whole little person, just like
Mm,
you
mm,
have said. That's exactly
yes.
what our job is. So it's just a matter of getting that message through to the people who make decisions, and I think
Mm,
if we can get on board campaigns like Music for Every Child Every Week is a campaign that I'm
mm,
very involved in up here in Queensland, and working with the Tony Foundation nationally, and just getting in people's ears as much as we can. But I do
mm,
love your
mm.
idea of year level singing. If you can wrench that bit of time off the,
Yes.
because that's getting
Even if you can't
harder.
get half an hour, like 15 minutes even,
Give me
or,
help.
you
Yes,
know.
it's getting harder and harder. I mean, gone are the days
Mm,
when I could have a Musica Viva incursion, or heaven forbid, we get a bus and go to see QSO, or like, to
mm,
have that time now is so
mm,
difficult,
mm,
because
mm,
we've got to do all the important things. And I think, goodness
mm.
gracious, if you
And
let us.
look, the number of times as well working in a school, sitting in the staff room at lunchtime or something, and you'll just happen to mention something about a kid that did this amazing thing in your class, and their class teacher will say, "That kid, you're kidding," you know, but oh, they're just like so unengaged in all the time in my class, and they're hopeless at this, and they can't do that. They're probably one of the stars in my class. But then that idea of like, but surely, we talk so much about the whole child and giving them, you know, working to their strengths, giving them opportunities to be able to, show themselves, and children with learning difficulties as well, and all of this kind of spectrum of things that's happening in terms of the way people learn. By taking music or by taking the arts out of the equation, you're cutting all these kids out from being able to do well, being able to excel. And that's just one one aspect, of it. But I can't count how many times that's happened to me working in a school where, just because they just need that creative outlet, or they just really associate with this idea of using their voice or whatever it is that they do that they're not able to do anywhere else in the school week. And then they're so relieved, and so they just totally engaged and they excel. And anyway, yeah,
Well, what we
so
do is,
much.
we really, really are important. We just have to convince. What we do is, I shouldn't say we are important. Oh, well, we are. But what I mean is, what we do is really important. We just have to,
Yes, what's provided.
we have to
Yeah,
convince the
absolutely. Yeah,
people that make the decisions, don't we? I have
yes.
really, really, really enjoyed talking to you, Grant. It's amazing. And it's great that we finally, even though it's via Zoom, have actually got to meet via Zoom.
Yes.
And I hope
Yes.
we'll meet in real life one day soon. But before we
Absolutely.
go,
Yeah.
I like to give you an opportunity to get on your soapbox, because
I
I
think I've
just,
already done that.
well, we've just spent an hour on your soapbox. I love it, because I'm sharing your soapbox, because you're saying all the things that I agree with, and I think all the listeners are too. They're going, yeah. Um, do you want to leave us with just a couple of profound
Well,
words?
I've got a few soapboxes actually, so if you want another soapbox,
Yeah,
I've probably
go
got
for
quite
it.
a few.
Go for it. Get on them. Get on
One
them.
that comes to my mind, thinking of primary music, well, not just primary music, but I guess that's where I've had most of my classroom experience anyway, is the role of technology in the music classroom. I I maybe, again, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I know that I often found myself in classes being in schools being encouraged, pushed to use technology in my classroom. I have nothing against technology at all. I think it's amazing. I think there's so many amazing things you can do with music. However, if I'm going to see that class for 40 minutes a week, I don't want them sitting in front of a computer.
Mhm.
I want them getting the instruments out. I want them banging. I want them singing. I want them dancing. I want them experiencing music like we were talking about before in their bodies. Um, and I can remember in one particular staff meeting when I was feeling pushed to do this, I said, "What would be a really good, a really interesting sort of thing to do would be to pick one child. So say pick someone from year two. Let's just follow them around for a day and see what they do." Because I said, unfortunately, what we do, especially as we have our various specialists, like our art specialists, a music specialist, whatever, the class teacher, then they do PE or whatever they do. We all kind of working a little bit in our own thing. And if we follow, how many times is that year kid going to get out a laptop or get out an iPad in a day? Because we're all thinking, oh, we should use technology, you
Mhm.
know, and then it was really interesting I actually, nobody really wanted to do it, but I thought, I'm going to do that just for my own interest. And it was like, well, in Italian, they're using the apps and they're doing all this thing on, in Italian. For their literacy, they're using a computer. For numeracy, they're using the interactive whiteboard. For this, that. So through the day, they were on a device more than they were not on a device. And so I just think, well, sure, there's lots of fun things we can do on devices in music, but if that's the only time I've got with them, I want to get the instruments out. I want to bang. I want to sing. I want to jump. I want to move around. I want to feel them. I want to give them experiences that they don't otherwise get.
Mhm.
Um, and they'll probably go home and go on their computer for ages as well. So I'm not really offering them anything different. I'm sure that if you just said the name of a music app, they could go home and work it out for themselves anyway.
In fact,
So,
can I
and I'm not
say
saying,
they'd be better than you at it
yeah, I
within
don't
like
probably
five
have much to
minutes?
offer, but what I do have to offer is sort of giving them that experience of immersing them in the music so that then they can take that and then maybe later in their teenage years or when they go home after school, whatever, they use that in their creation of something that's using technology. But I really feel like we need to, I don't know what it's like at the moment, but I feel like we could almost ditch it
Mhm. That's
and
so
just say
that's
that's what I feel like. But
oh, thank you. I look, I yeah, okay. I will say apologies to all those people who are very into their technology. I'm agreeing with you.
oh
I have
yeah,
I have my
yeah,
children for 30 minutes a week. And I do in
yeah,
year five, I do a little I don't like using the words unit because I don't do units, but I'm about to do a little thing where they do bring in their iPads and we're going to do The Lion Sleeps Tonight in GarageBand. They have to sing
mm,
it in,
mm,
they have to put in the guitar chords and a percussion track. And that's sort of about it. But then some of them
mm,
will take that away and do it. But I'm sort of, even that I could really do without because I've only got them for 30 minutes. By the time we've
mm,
played a
mm.
singing game, we've grabbed some instruments, we've done a rhythmic activity, we've like listened to something and like 30 minutes. And
Yeah, it's not,
honestly,
is it? No.
I really do mean it when I say they will be better than us. So if for a
Mm,
fun
mm,
last 3 minutes I put Incredibox on the screen and we
mm.
drag the little things and they go da, da, and they go, that's fun. I go, yes, I gave up 3 minutes of my lesson to do that.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
um,
yeah,
they will go away and play with it then. I've said it
yeah,
exists, off you go. I don't have time to do lots of that stuff. So
yeah.
I am, I think it would be very different if I had them for a lot longer. I would probably
Yes, of course.
allow that.
Yeah,
Our time is really
absolutely.
precious. Um,
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah,
agreeing with you
yeah.
100%. I like your soapbox. Ah, Well, Grant, it's been amazing talking to you, and we will put all of your details in the show notes. Oh, do you want to tell everyone what your website is in case they can't be bothered looking up the show notes?
Sure, it's just seize the tune, like seize the day, but seize the tune.com. That's it.
It's just a .com. It's not an AU. It's just a .com. So,
Not an AU.
So tell me, I know I've already wrapped up and now I'm asking you another question. Seize the tune. What was your inspiration? Just as in, no, just seize the tune.
I just really like the phrase seize the day.
Okay.
I just really like that phrase, carpe diem and seize the day and all that. And I just kind of thought, oh, seize the tune. It's not particularly fantastic idea, but to be honest, I think I was at the point of needing to do a website and I had to come up with a name, and I kind of come up with that name, and I've just kept it. But yeah, it's very much from seize the day.
And I like
very
that
much from
because
there.
I think that's what we do as music educators, composers. You've got to seize the tune. You've got to make the most of your opportunities and just jump, do it.
Yeah, do it.
Thank you again.
Thanks, Debbie. Bye.
As we know, laughter relieves stress. Don't lose sight of the funny side of life. I have, you probably don't know this about me, but I have a pathological fear of 2-letter words. I get terrified just thinking about it. Thank you so much for watching our Crescendo Music Education podcast. For more information about all things crescendo, including membership and music education resources, visit us at crescendo.com.au. Don't forget to like and subscribe.